mic here. So I'm trying to figure out what it is.
So this mic, he said I can record it on the video camera, but he said it's also going to be on the LunaTech.org website, and they can go to the website and play it. So like Cindy or Adrian can go to the website and see the city council meeting.
Mike's working on the audio, so. Hey, Jeremy.
It is quiet.
I know. Good evening, guests, citizens, staff, and council. And let's begin our meeting this evening, a study session. And we're going to start off, we have 4 items. First up is youth and government, and we have Mark Behrens.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Behrens with Community Development, and one of the programs that I manage is the Youth and Government Program. I'll just give you a little bit of background on the program. If anyone can't hear me, just holler and I'll speak up.
And the microphones around the table are not working. What's being picked up is the universal system, so you might have to speak a little bit louder, and that goes for Vanessa and Garrett as well.
So in 2011, the Youth and Government Committee was formed and tasked with developing a program that would involve and engage Littleton Public School students and high school students that reside in the city of Littleton. The program gives the students the opportunity to interact with city departments that typically would have some type of interaction with businesses within the city. The program was created in response to city council goals set for 2012. The committee is comprised of myself, Tim Weaver with Public Works, and Mark Decker with the library. In the 2013 Youth and Government Day was held at the City Center on September 26th. There were 15 LPS and Littleton resident students in attendance. Lisa White from the Colorado Municipal League gave the keynote speech. Tim Weaver gave the kids a brief civics lesson, and 7 departments within the city gave a brief overview of how their departments interact with local businesses. Lucy Stanich with Downtown Dinners graciously donated breakfast and a snack, and Chick-fil-A donated lunch. After lunch, each of the students were given the task of creating a home-based business from a private residence. They were then given the opportunity to ask questions of each department representative during a roundtable discussion, and then given 3 weeks to complete their projects. The projects were judged on issue identification, organization, content knowledge, visuals, and creativity. This year's scholarship winners are Garrett Daly from Arapahoe High School and Vanessa Whitehall from Heritage High School. And we're going to have Vanessa come up first and give you her presentation. Vanessa.
Hi, so I'm Vanessa from Heritage High School. I'm a junior there.
And I used to quote, "I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interactions. The world will have a generation of idiots." So the reason why I'm doing this is because we're beginning to create a world in which being socially inept is normal. And in this business, I hope to avoid this altogether. So due to overuse in technology, from what I've seen, kids are lacking in everyday social skills, and they're not aware of the dangers that can come with technology and the responsibilities. So I think that's really important. And the reason I'm targeting teenagers mostly here is they're the next generation to be in charge. So we really need to make sure that we can keep them good. And so here's just a video from YouTube that's kind of just funny and
This is Jim. Jim just got into a new relationship. Jim, well, let's just say he's head over heels in love. Moment with her. She's the first thing he sees every morning.
What's the weather going to be like today?
And the last thing he sees every night.
Is it beyond 3:30?
Okay, I set an alarm for 8:30 a.m.
Thanks, honey.
Each day, he learns to suddenly think about her.
You take video too?
He starts ignoring his friends in favor of spending time with her. When he does talk to his friends, it's always about how slim and attractive she is, and all the amazing things she can do. When he messes up, he does everything he can to make it right. And he pampers her, buying her things she doesn't really need. As time goes by, things that used to be easy start to seem hard. She doesn't surprise Jim anymore, and he begins to see her flaws.
I told you to remind me about Stacy's birthday.
He complains about her to his friends.
Sorry, guys, I don't stay forever.
When he wants to spend time with her at night, she says she doesn't have the energy. As
The realization sets in that they won't be together forever. He starts to get careless. They fight in public. They fight in the car.
I thought you said take a right. Well, say something.
Why don't you talk to me?
Jim's eyes start to wander. One day he strays to fulfill needs she can no longer meet.
Keep the change.
Finally, he leaves her. For a little while, he's helpless, lost, alone. But eventually, he starts a new relationship. Jim is smiling and starry-eyed as a wave of excitement washes over him. Surely things will be different this time.
If you like that video, click me to subscribe. This phone.
Okay, so that's kind of an extreme version of what I'm talking about, but just to show that things can get out of hand if we don't watch them. So this would be a one-person business that's run out of my home, and I would occasionally maybe have guest speakers, and I plan to rent out a room, a public space, like a local rec center or a library, to have them talk. Like I said before, it's a series of classes. It teaches kids and teens about social etiquette that could have been lost during this technology age. But safety awareness, safety and awareness when using technology and social media sites is really important. So this business is different because, this business is different from any other classes. I have never, in my research, I never saw anything like this. So, like there's, like maybe a few, just websites that talk about it, but they don't really focus on it. As diversity and tolerance are important, I was not able to find any classes similar to mine, such as driving classes. I have noticed talked a little bit about the importance of being safe, but they don't fully address the issue. Sports teams and clubs also help to achieve these goals because they really talk about, you know, team and staying away from technology and being active. So I think those are important too, but there was nothing that really did the same. So my goals were to help kids and teens develop basic social skills and enjoy others. I also plan to create racial tolerance and understanding through means of personal communication. And I plan to teach kids to become technologically safe and aware of what they put on the internet. And lastly, I want to try and, create a block in the road to cyberbullying, because as technology has grown, that has been a problem that's been on the rise. So one of my biggest pet peeves is seeing people on their phones 24/7, and being in high school, this is really common. There have been numerous times where I've been talking to someone and they can't even bear to put their phone down just to hear what I have to say. So this is disrespectful, but about 95% of the time, they don't even hear me because they're too preoccupied to even listen. Phones are constantly used at the most inappropriate times, such as during movies and restaurants, and it's really disruptive. So in many homes, people have begun to change family time to revolve around their technology, like maybe eating around the TV or not eating at all together, which is causing a universal hindrance in advancement of society. Racial tolerance, racism as a whole has been a standing problem in society, and although we have made a lot of advancements, we're not totally where we need to be. So I hope to change this by helping people connect with one another one-on-one and really get to know each other through personal accounts. So it would help develop ties between everyone. Staying safe on the internet has remained one of the biggest concerns of today. What makes this such a problem is that kids and teens are allowing too much personal information to circulate on personal files. As the internet has become more updated, it has made it easier to find what you're looking for. And so at the same time, although this is very convenient, this idea is flawed because it also makes finding or even stalking people incredibly easy, because it's allowing you to access all of their online profiles, given that the standard policies are chosen. So in recent news, it was found that Miss Teen USA, Cassidy Wolf, was one of the many victims of a crime commonly used as sextortion. And she was secretly being watched through the webcam of her computer for a long time and was threatened to be blackmailed with the videos that the blackmailer had received. So this would be a topic that I would cover because it's so dangerous, and it's just one example as why kids need to be safe and aware using technology.
He utilizes software to create an email to send to her that has an attachment in it. She opens that attachment, and all of a sudden, he gains access to her computer. Once he uses the software to gain remote access to her computer, he has access to her computer as though he was sitting in her room, which means he can actually turn on any product, including a webcam application. Actually zoom in, zoom out, pan left, pan right, everything. The number one lesson here that I have been touting for more than a decade is don't click on anything you're not expecting.
That's the safest place I feel like you have in your life is your own bedroom. So it's just weird that somebody invaded that privacy to that extent. He knew my friends and he knew my family. He talked about my mom, he talked about my brother. He knew everything about me, everything. So it's really creepy to know that somebody knew so much about me and my personal life. FBI sent me a list of tips to help prevent this from happening to somebody. They're on the Miss Teen USA website for if anybody wants to go and look at them. But some of my main tips are to, 1, change your passwords, because make them difficult. Put symbols, put asterisks, whatever, make them difficult. 2, to delete your browsing history, and 3, to put a sticker over your webcam. And most importantly, to be careful what you're doing on your computer and around your computer, because you never know what, people could be doing to it. It happened to me when I was a normal girl. It happened to me before I had a title. It can happen to anybody, and I just hope people see this and they can, start to put these actions into their everyday life and start to take the steps to help protect themselves so it doesn't ever happen to them.
That video got a little crazy, but I don't know if you could hear it. She was just basically saying that this hacker had gained all of her information just through watching her in her bedroom. And so as she said on the website, there are a few tips, and I would definitely make sure to cover all of those in my classes. So putting cyberbullying to a halt. It seems as though suicide as a result of cyberbullying is a problem on the rise. Recently, another young person has committed suicide as a result of being verbally, physically, and/or cyberbullied. So in my class, I'll focus on the importance of being really conscious of what you say on the internet about yourself and comments that you would gear towards others. and I will note on the effect that words can have on a life. This topic would be one that I would have a speaker on probably, so choosing someone with firsthand accounts on the situation. I'll help kids and teens who may be struggling with cyberbullying or are being cyberbullied themselves and are in need of help finding a way to put an end to it. So these are just some stats. Over half of adolescents and teens have been bullied online, and about the same number have engaged in cyberbullying themselves. More than 1 in 3 young people have experienced cyber threats online. Over 25% of adolescents and teens have been bullied repeatedly through their cell phones and on the internet. And well over half of young people do not tell their parents when cyberbullying occurs, so it's not even like mentioned. So it's something that's really underlying, and I think we need to bring up and put a stop to it. This is just a little bit of information behind it. My target customers would be middle school kids and teenagers of all races and income groups. And it could even be to parents too, because I've noticed that as it's more prevalent in teens, it still is a little bit in the adult age. But depending on the demand to younger kids as well. I was looking in the packet, and the ESRI market profile shows that in 2012, there were 42,514 people living in Littleton, and the graphic profile shows that 17.3% of the population is in the 5 to 19 age range. So this means that in 2012, there were 7,354 kids from 5 to 19 living in Littleton. The profile shows that in 2017's kids 5 to 19 will make up 17% of the total population, which the actual amount would be about 45,092. So in other words, projected in 2013, there should be around 7,000 kids in this age group. Even though the percentage of that age group is going down, the number of kids is increasing, so my business will have a lot of potential clientele. Kids of all races will be included, because I think the best way to promote tolerance and improve race relations is to help them interact with one through personal communication, as I said before. And I hope that the training will really give kids the opportunity and skills to communicate across race with ease and enjoyment. Income analysis, according to the profile, the biggest group of citizens earned about $50,000 to $74,000, and more people own homes instead of renting. Most people should be able to afford the training. And I kind of based the prices off of this. The lowest income families may need financial help to attend, which I would try to get sponsors for, or find a way to help them be able to take this class. So to reach all income groups and all races, I may need to provide transportation and have classes at, just public places, since the company wants to help with tolerance and diversity problems. Providing transportation and offering a lower price to people below a certain income would be, I think, a very good idea. So this is a single-owned business, so I'll be doing most of the work. I'm on my high school dance team, and I'm a link leader. So we just help, freshmen kind of find their way in high school and fit in. My friends and family could help me set up a website and show me how to keep records. I've learned a lot about business from the Youth in Government Day, and I tend to apply all of it to my work. The company is not really one that I would sell products for, but if I were, I might do something just like a t-shirt or a journal or something, just to kind of keep things going. I would market to parents in, say, like a magazine like Parent Magazine, or back to school nights and flyers. And I could even talk at libraries or clubs. I might partner with people giving babysitting classes, just online email offers, anything to really get the word out. This is just the money situation that I would be needing. Summary of my initial cost to start this business. I would come up with the money to start my business by babysitting. I know that I'll have to pay income tax on what I make, but I don't know what that would be at this time. I don't plan on selling any products, so I'll not be collecting any sales tax. And I wanted to thank everyone from the city of Littleton for your help. It really meant a lot and helped me a lot in my project, so thank you. I mean, there's the gist of the song, but what?
That's cool.
Okay, so thank you for listening. That's my question.
Vanessa? Mark, does Vanessa have a chance for a few questions in case council?
I think so. And also, Vanessa is the winner of a $1,500 scholarship.
Oh, whoa. Council have any questions? Cool. Okay. Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Well, I guess I do have one question.
Oh.
I do have one question. So how will you approach the seniors too? Because they also have those kind of issues.
Senior citizens?
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess maybe through the grandchildren, if they found out their grandchildren were taking it, want to connect with the grandchildren, I could bring them in, have like a grandparents day or something, and just kind of talk about different ways it's important to them, because I think that not growing up with this age, you don't also know all the dangers and everything of it, so I think that would be really important to focus on. So I would definitely make sure to bring them in on a day too, maybe with the parents or something. But
Great. And Vanessa, are there any special guests you'd like to introduce?
these are my parents.
Congratulations.
Very good.
Thank you.
And our next presenter is Garrett Daly from Arapahoe High School.
Sorry about this, I have to log in first. I'm Garrett Daly from Arapahoe High School. I'm a senior.
And that's the password with all the asterisks and hashtags, right?
Well, he's setting it up for the city council when we move to Google. We'll be using Fuzzy. Okay.
This is, LPS has this rolled out everywhere, right? Where Ken's not here. The board.
Yeah.
And Prezi in particular, they're real big on it. Yeah.
All right, so it's a little cut off, but that's fine. So I created a three-dimensional printing business, and I find it really funny. 30 years ago, we didn't even have the modern era of computers. We had large buildings with whole rooms full of processing power that doesn't even match what is in most of our pockets today. And now we're living in a generation where we're not only able to print from these machines, but we're now able to print three-dimensional objects that can even encase these machines. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. I have a little video here, just a little introduction to 3D printing in case you haven't heard of it yet.
When we started MakerBot in 2009, it was an experiment to make 3D printing affordable. Now, 4 years later, we've engineered the MakerBot Replicator 2 to be both affordable and reliable. For the daredevils out there, the Doc Browns, the MacGyvers, the test pilots, we haven't forgot about you. We created the MakerBot Replicator 2X experimental 3D printer for you to push the boundaries of what's next. It is the most full-featured, sophisticated, and future-proof 3D printer on the market. The freshly redesigned heated build platform and the brand new enclosure are set up to optimize your experience with MakerBot ABS filaments.
The build plate on the MakerBot Replicator 2X has been completely redesigned for consistent high performance with ABS. The build plate's made of cast and machined aluminum that should prevent any warping or sagging that will affect the quality of your prints. The plate has also been anodized to increase the durability and longevity, and is much more efficient at distributing heat than the previous build plate on the MakerBot Replicator.
The MakerBot Replicator 2X has the ability to make large ABS prints more reliably than the original replicator. The enclosure blocks drafts and stabilizes the cool down period.
One of the most significant changes we've made to this machine is the redesigned extruder. The extruder on the MakerBot Replicator 2X has been re-engineered from the ground up for easier loading and less maintenance. The new design features a constant force filament drive system that will reduce skipping, slipping, and jamming. This means beautiful prints with less wear on your machine.
The MakerBot Replicator 2X equips you with an experimenter's toolkit. The dual extruder allows for multicolor 3D printing, and you can push the limits and experiment with what's next with multi-material 3D printing.
The new release of MakerWare makes it easy and enjoyable to create dual extrusion models. You can drag different models onto the build plate and position them how you like. You can even view your model in the two colors you plan to print it in.
The redesigned thermal core and the improved alignment of the extruders really brings dual extrusion to a new level. It's going to allow designers to stop thinking of how to print and start thinking of what to print.
The Replicator 2 set a new standard in desktop 3D printing. It was really made for the engineers, industrial designers, and architects who needed something simple and reliable. Now, the MakerBot Replicator 2X pushes the limits of what's possible and puts you in the experimenter's seat, figuring out what happens next in the future. The MakerBot Replicator 2X is made for those who are willing to wrestle with the challenges of ABS. If you've ever gotten under the hood and tuned up a hot rod or rebuilt an engine or built a trebuchet from scratch, the MakerBot Replicator 2X is for you. We can't wait to see what boundaries you'll push, what frontiers you'll explore, and the things that you'll make.
So that's just a short video explaining a little bit of what's going on in the 3D printing industry. And you heard him mention a lot about they're making these new advancements from even the MakerBot 2. And this is, well, their way of saying that their industry is coming a long way in a short amount of time. They've went from what 10 years ago was a 5-figure product all the way down to you can have one of these in your home for about $2,600, or even cheaper if you'd like a machine that can print in a little bit less detail. So my business, a little bit general name, Printed Customs. My sort of motto, I would say, is a whole new generation of innovation. And the three dimensions of business that I came up with is one, the beginning, the startup of the business, arguably the most important part. If you're starting off in a bad position, then the business simply isn't going to work out. 2, the sales. You have to make sure that your product is selling well, and of course, to do that, you need to advertise well and get the word spread throughout the community. And the result, which is hopefully to have a nationally recognized product that really explodes. So the beginning, I'm going to start out just really quick reading this mission statement. Here at Printed Designs, we desire to provide you with the largest customization ability in the technology industry. We want you, the consumer, to have the ability to accessorize your technology with only a few clicks. Our aim is to bring your vision for phone, laptop, tablet, and all electronics accessories to your doorstep at a low cost. So what this is referring to is that my business is creating different accessories such as, say, an iPhone case, an iPad case, all these different things in as much customization as you would like it. You can go as far as to, if you have someone 3D engineer your face onto a computer, which is easier and easier every day with systems like Cinema 4D, CAD, anything like that. And I could put that onto the iPhone case itself, and you can get that personal with it, even printing different colors like you saw in the video. So for the starting fees, this is an expensive business to start. It's no small undertaking. It's about $42,000 You'll see this ABS filament in different colors. This is just a projection onto the success that is supposed to happen with this sort of business, something that is this revolutionary. You see there's tons of different colors, and then you'll see the MakerBot 3D printer 2X version. Those are a little bit more expensive, and I'd like to have 8 of those in the business for multiple printings at once. You see Formlabs Form 1 3D printer, which we didn't quite go over in the presentation, or rather the video there. But it is a totally different type of 3D printer than what you saw there. It doesn't print through a extruder like those. It rather uses light waves, which is really revolutionary to get a little bit more detailed design at the price of them being a little bit more expensive. And the MakerBot Digitizer, which more or less makes what would be my job easier, because you can scan things in 3 dimensions just as you would use a scanner on your printer at home. For the location, I chose this nice home here. It is in the southern part of Littleton. There is just over 2,300 square feet, and the basement would be used for the print shop. I took the liberty of not including this in my startup fee and assumed that it would be already there, but that's another thing. So the advantages for this location, it's close to Denver and not too far from DIA, just in case the business does explode and business meetings in and out of Denver International Airport. There's great space for living and manufacturing, plenty of room for this sort of business. You can have a lot of 3D printers in a small area, especially with their such a little energy use. And like that, it's perfect for energy requirements. So here's a little map of where it is, and you'll see on the right is a MapQuest. That's DIA up there, or it's rather the center of Denver where business meetings would occur. So it's just 13.6 miles from there, about a 21-minute drive. And then on the left you see the actual location in Littleton itself. The living and working. So you'll see the top left picture, there's a lot of space for living. And the bottom picture, that is the actual area that I would plan to work out of. You'll see outlets on the left and right down there in the corner, you might be able to, but I'll go over that in a little bit. So here are the energy demands. It's 221 watts to run, and that's just 4 light bulbs. So you'll notice that's quite the non-expense. Like you really don't have to worry about that or running out any breakers or anything. And really they don't make a lot of noise, so you're not going to have to worry about neighbors getting mad with that at all. It's more or less the perfect business to run out of a basement, sort of like you would a hobby. That's just a little bit of paperwork. No one wants to see that. The plan. So it's really important that this business get off the ground fast, and the only way to do that is through a lot of social media, really engineering. You need to get your product across, and that's through not only social media sites that you would expect, like Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, any of those really popular ones, but really every social media site, because when it comes down to it, this product is intended for an audience that is really into technology. They're technology adept, and they're going to be the consumers for this sort of product. So you want to be able to have them access not only the website, but a place where they can actually create these designs from where the design will be created for. So you'll see these are just a few of the things that would be really easy to create. You got mouse pads, those little rubber band bracelets you see around a lot for fundraising, and assortment of cases, these grippy pads that you can use for holding stuff in your car. Really everything can be created with this ABS ink. And I also didn't mention before, you can also get PBL filament for these, which is just about the same price, but maybe you want to create an iPhone case that is a little less likely to overheat. You would use that rather than the ABS filament. So the sales. You'll find this picture really interesting. This was taken at an expo for 3D printing a few years back, actually, and those are just some of the things that they can create. These are actually high heels that somebody purchased and probably wore to some sort of fashion show. You'll see later someone, an artist created a dress out of just 3D printing and interlocking his prints. And it's really important that once the business takes off from creating these accessories, that I'm able to open it up to really creating anything. They can upload their files onto the website, just like you would on, if you wanted to get something printed at a Kinko's or anything, and then I print it and send it out. So taxes, tax-exempt license will allow for the materials like the PBL or ABS ink to be purchased free of tax. A lot of sales will be intercontinental, so they'll be exempt of the Colorado sales tax. And then sales taxes like this will be covered by the buyer, as you would pay taxes and shipping and handling on a website if you're ordering from somewhere like Amazon. So pricing, I did a little bit of calculations, and the average price I would assume would be about $35. That would cover things anywhere from lower items, like you see this chess piece here, would be a really cheap item to print and really quick print, to an iPhone case that would run about $25, which is completely reasonable for today's iPhone cases, where you have something printed off a website and you end up paying $50 or so to have your significant other's face printed on there. And here's the dress I was talking about, this lady in the middle. This was at a sort of pageant, and an artist created this for her, and you'll see it's a little bit hard to tell on the screen, but these interlocking 3D prints were put together by an artist, and he just more or less 3D modeled it in a CAD program, SolidWorks, I believe, and then had someone print it, put it together. She wore it, and it was a huge success. These sorts of things are becoming more and more prominent in the fashion industry now that this technology has become a little bit more recognized. So a spool of filament, you saw it's just under $17 on the first slide. And with the amount of time to print and the amount of objects that can be printed with, I believe it was 2.2 pounds of this filament per spool, you end up with about a profit of $450 per spool, which is a 2,600% return on investment, which is fairly crazy for any investment. So purchases, you see these are really, really simple websites that are really accessible by mobile, and this is how the website for Printed Customs would be modeled after. You don't want a website where people can get lost, or a website where people can't find their shopping cart, anything like that. You want something that people can, I guess you would say, impulse buy on. Their friends are all getting their Printed Customs phone cases in, and they decide to get on their iPhone right then, and they choose a custom file, and we print it and send it out to them. So the result of this, hopefully the result is a very successful company, obviously, through marketing, distribution, and I'll go over a few goals that the company would have. So as I mentioned earlier, obviously you want every social media site possible. As many ways to access the business as possible is the best way to go. You don't want things like advertising in a phone book or advertising on a billboard. Those things are a lot less effective than creating these free accounts or even slightly paid accounts for them to be verified in order for you to get a little bit more credibility with the website. But you would even see YouTube is down there in the bottom right corner. Videos, a lot of companies that do customized products put out videos on YouTube, and you can go on there and watch the video, watch not only how it's made, but you can watch as they go over a list of sort of a gallery of pictures where you're able to see, oh, I like this design, I would change this, and create your own custom product through that. So the distribution, obviously, it's not going to be people coming up and picking it up from the home. That's simply unreasonable idea. It'll be places like the U.S. Postal Service or private industry mailing companies like FedEx and UPS that will send these out after shipping cost, which will of course be handled by the consumer. You end up with, like I said, a $450 return on investment for the spool of ink, and that really quickly pays off the overall investment that was in the beginning of 42 grand. So the goals, the ultimate goal is really quite a simple one. It's for Printed Customs to grow into a company that's not only shipping to Colorado, not only shipping to Littleton, but shipping all throughout the world and to people, consumers rather, all over the world in countries like China, and for these products to be globally recognized. So I'd just like to leave you with this. I like this. This is no doggy daycare business. This is a revolution. You see a lot of the doggy daycare vans around here and in the suburbs. And this is far from that. This is a company that really there's only been one other company that has done this, and it was ran out of the UK, and they're having great success right now. And to bring something like this to Colorado would be truly something that would give the state and the business a lot of recognition. That's it.
Council, any questions?
Hi, Garrett. That was a great presentation. I have good news and bad news. Today at the Littleton Rotary Club, we had a presentation by a lady who has opened this exact business that you have described. Wow. And she said, as she introduced herself, it is the only business in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing many of the same things that you described. And to the club, she brought in one of the maker bots and did a presentation right there. Her business is on Monaco, just north of I-70, and I imagine she'd be really tickled to meet you and talk to you about that. The name of her company is the 3D Printing Store. And what she's finding that she can do is create small items for companies that don't have the in-house ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's becoming involved in some patent issues and some other things because she's able to produce for them. And I think everything you said, it's amazing, is everything that she discussed. So you have a great opportunity here to be the number 2 store.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask a couple quick questions. I wondered if you had the conversation with your parents about where you're applying for graduate business school.
Yeah. Right now, I actually just committed a few weeks back to Colorado School of Mines, and I'll be going there for engineering, and hopefully I'll be able to, with the help of their software engineers, be able to get my hands on a few of these CAD programs so that I can, in fact, start making some of these for myself. It's been something that I've been really interested in.
Mines is obviously a strong program. The other, just a practical question I was going to ask you when you had your business case up there, it's generally, given the amount of capital you were looking to raise, and I understand you're not necessarily going to do this, but I wondered if you had thought about, as part of the process, the process of either raising that capital or, for example, instead of actually spending to purchase the equipment, for example, leasing it as a way to save some cash flow up front. Just wondered if that was something you guys had talked about or had...
Yeah, when I thought over this project, it was something that I thought would definitely be maybe once you're already in an industry to start this company on the side and see how it succeeds, rather than, of course, starting it as someone of my age, because, of course, things like shoveling driveways and mowing lawns isn't going to get there very quickly, but yeah, it was indeed something I considered would be a difficult thing to raise.
Thank you.
Questions? Certainly, congratulations, Garrett. I know Mark has something for you, and I also want to congratulate Vanessa, whose jazz dance team won state on her birthday. So, yeah.
And Garrett is our first place winner, and Garrett is the recipient of a $2,500 scholarship.
And Garrett, are there any guests that have been replicated that you might want to introduce?
Yeah, this is my father, Timothy Daly, and my mother, Cammie Daly.
Okay. Okay, and now we're going to item 1B on our agenda, Care Here, and Eric, take it away.
These guys are probably going to leave, but Chris, they go.
Yes, and Vanessa and Garrett, you're welcome to leave. I know you have school tomorrow, so.
As long as it's connected, it should be okay. So I probably don't have to turn it on.
Hang on, we're on.
So what's going on?
Finals week is coming up at, it's the last finals week here next week, so.
That's right. Yeah. Hey. Leaking here.
You want me to wait for
And Councilmember Stallman will be in a moment, so. Here.
Is this the one that's out of Goodson? Or Buck Center, I mean?
Buck Center.
Yeah. Yes. Because we don't have any information.
Eric, if you want to get started.
Okay, so we are presenting just an update on the healthcare clinic, and I'm going to introduce to you a couple members of Care Here, since they manage our clinic for us. Today with us is Ben Baker and Utona Shelton, who will be presenting some of our progress with the healthcare clinic.
Good evening. It's good to be with you. Some of you may remember me from about a year and a half ago. We were in town. I think we were down in that room over there. We talked about the possibility of an on-site clinic, and now we're back today to give you a report on how things have gone. So we want to walk through a number of things, particularly some financials and some details, but I'm sure that you'll have questions. So at any point, obviously, just stop me and we'll drill down as deeply as you'd like. Whenever we give annual reports, we want to make sure that we address a couple of things. Certainly, we want to talk about hard dollar savings, costs that we've incurred in the clinic. How do those compare in the marketplace? If you had them done out in a typical doctor's office, what would the cost be? What does that compare to the value that you're receiving in the clinic? In addition to that, however, long-term, we're trying to focus on impacting through prevention by identifying problems early and then getting those folks in care so that they don't become large claims down the road. A little bit more difficult to put your arms around, but we try to quantify that so we can get a feel for that. There are also other savings that are less tangible. This type of a service has become very important to a number of our clients. 60% of our clients are municipalities and across the country. And being able to retain and recruit the right people, this becomes a tool that allows them to do that more effectively. Because from the employee's perspective, having an on-site clinic certainly is a convenience. But because they're able to do that without deductibles and co-pays, it becomes a real savings in their own pocket over the course of a year, particularly if they have a family that's involved. So we'll keep those broad brush concepts in mind as we drill down and look through this in detail. Any questions so far before we get started? Well, thank you for having us here tonight. Let's just jump right into some of the numbers. This is a very detailed look at some of the things going on with your clinic. And we certainly won't look at every number here. You may have an opportunity to pour over these in greater depth at your convenience. But I do want to highlight a couple of things that are critical, and then you may have questions on this particular page. First of all, the average number of employees that had access to, let me take over that for you. Okay. I can stay back over here. Is that more helpful if I stay back?
It'll turn on. Give it a few seconds.
That's this one.
Oh, sorry, but I'll just stay next to this mic over here. Point the best I can. I'm trying to be rude when I do that. Cool. Okay?
Go Ben.
Okay. The operations for your clinic that you see overall, let's first look at the total number and then we'll back down from that. Costs were $257,000 this year, all in, our management fee, cost to set up the clinic, operational costs, et cetera. That was about $24,000 less than we anticipated, about almost 9% under what we had expected. And then we can drill down into what we think those differences were and why. First of all, when we first came to you, we projected it would take about $20,000 to set up the clinic, that is, get the exam tables and the supplies and the medications together. Once the commitment was made to move forward, we looked at some space and decided we would add an additional exam room, not just to 2 that we had intended to go with a 3rd, and also very shortly thereafter participate in a flu shot program. So some of those things contributed to some additional costs here on the setup line that were greater than we had anticipated. So that's something we want to draw your attention to. So from the get-go, we had some additional expansion to what the scope was over what we had proposed. Over the course of the year, we had a nurse practitioner and a physician working with us. Initially, we had proposed that would be more of a 50-50 mix. It turns out that the nurse practitioner has slightly more hours than the doctor does at the clinic, and that works out fine for your employee base, but that also affected some of the cost shift you see here in the personnel. So our overall costs from a medical perspective, less on the doc, but more on the nurse practitioner, but about 5% over what we had anticipated. So we've got personnel, we've got setup, and those are the things we've looked at so far. But now, a couple of things that are the more substantial changes that we want to look at in detail, and that's in the medication column. We had anticipated spending about $80,000, close to $80,000 worth of medications to dispense to your patients through the clinic. That's not a pharmacy. It's a dispensary, and that's important to make a distinction. We make sure that the patients are aware of that. They can't just bring a script in from another doctor and get it filled at the clinic. They have to be treated by a provider and have the medication dispensed. That's according to Colorado regulations for medical dispensing. We're anticipating having a lot more volume than we did. And so we're focusing next year on trying to address those concerns. Some of that had to do with the very first part of the year. Utilization was not as strong as we had hoped, but it's come on very strong the second half of this year. So the adoption rate of your employees has increased as we move through the year. It's very high right now. I think we're at the 95% rate. We're much higher now than we've been at any other time in the past year. That's a good sign, and that's what we typically see over the first year. Folks begin to try us out and use us occasionally. Word of mouth spreads amongst employees, and by the end of the first year, momentum really starts to build, and you're showing that pattern today. So we've got a lot of numbers here. Let me summarize some of the things we've looked at that across the board here with a couple of specific numbers I want to draw your attention to. As we compare the dollar and the costs associated with this clinic, we look at all the expenditures and divide that by the number of visits. We can essentially create a cost per visit, as it were. And so that number initially is $161.38. If you take all of the costs, our management fee, the medications, labs, the providers, everything associated with the clinic. However, if you're going to compare that to what's happening in the marketplace when someone goes to the doctor, we need to compare that to a market rate of cost per visit. Well, when you go to the doctor's office, you don't typically receive your medications there. So we've extracted the medication cost here, the difference between those, and we've also extracted the lab cost because those are separate charges. And if I may go to the next slide, we'll come back to this if you have some more questions. It kind of graphically shows the difference here between those. This is your costs per office visit, all total through the clinic. This is compared to the numbers that we assessed when we first looked at the city of Littleton last year. What were you paying in your marketplace? For the same number of office visits, this is what your cost was at this time last year. Now, we want to compare that to what Cigna is actually seeing in your claims right now. So Cigna provided us a number that says that the typical office visit is around $129. So this same number of office visits in the Cigna system would have been this much. And so you can graphically begin to see the difference in the lower cost associated with just the office visit itself in the clinic. Now, I've talked quite a bit. Let me stop and see what questions you might have and how you might have to drill down a little further on some of these details. Yes, sir.
So going to Care Here versus going to Cigna, the employee has the choice of either, is that correct?
That is correct. Their insurance card is still in effect. They have the choice to go to a regular doctor's office in the marketplace if they choose. They're incentivized essentially to use the on-site clinic because there's no deductible and no copay. So from their perspective, that's an option for them to consider. When they do that, it's less expensive for the city of Littleton, as you can see here on this chart.
And it's right to the Buck Center, so it's time, we hope. But I guess that would be another question I would have, maybe you have the stats then. How many of these folks are still, they're at work that day versus took the day off?
A good question. I don't have those specific statistics, but we do see nationwide, in this setting, in this model, it's different than a typical doctor's office model. I mean, all of us can probably say you've sat in a doctor's office in a waiting room at least an hour, maybe before or longer. The drive to get there, the wait, it could be 2 or 3 hour experience. In some cases, perhaps even longer. In this situation, when I schedule a 10:20 appointment on Thursday morning, I'm the only person that has that appointment. I show up, and we're having that patient back to see the provider within 5 minutes at the latest. They have 20 minutes, so they have more time with the provider. Typically, at a doctor's office nationwide, once you finally get back there, it's 6 to 7 minutes. So you have less time waiting, but you're with the provider longer in this model. The entire experience, in terms of at the clinic, is over within 20 minutes. So certainly it has an impact. We could perhaps do some analysis to try to determine how's that helping folks get back to work quicker, more quickly.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Other questions so far?
You mentioned about the increased adoption rates at this point in time. The previous chart was showing 80%, so you're saying it's now like 95%.
Correct.
Is that folks that have used or families that have used the clinic as opposed to the total population?
Yes, in fact, this 80% is for the whole year, so it's taking into account those months when we're going so well and are just starting to have that number pulled northward. I'm going to jump ahead to a couple of other slides. They speak directly to what you're getting to, if I could. Let me get there quickly. This is a slide that talks about appointment frequency. So we've had 254 unique individuals access the Wellness Center. Now, we've had 57 of those individuals access the Wellness Center exactly one time. So that shows this distribution shows you how that mix goes out. So we have 8 people that have done it exactly 7 times. So this begins to show, and we're seeing that this particular adoption rate of 254, it's increasing here toward the second half of the year. More people are participating and going to the clinic, and more new faces are showing up as well. Now, almost always have somebody say, well, why in the world would somebody come to the clinic 28 times? We talked to them about that. We don't want somebody, some folks get lonely, they want to stop by and visit, but that's not exactly what we're looking for. What's happening in these outliers here? Because the cost is taken away and those kinds of issues and time away from work is lower. Someone who is on Coumadin, a blood thinner, that needs to have that checked on a regular basis can go into the clinic and have that test done every other week, for example, to check to make sure their blood thinner is accurate. That test only costs about $8. If they had gone to a cardiologist or whoever they're working with, that could be a $120, $150 visit. So you see how the opportunities here. It might be someone that's coming in on a regular basis to have blood pressure checked. So those are what those outliers tend to be, folks who are coming on and that's really what we would like to see. We're going to manage that closely, but we want those individuals that need their chronic management monitored closely, taking advantage of this low-cost option. Yes, sir.
Curious, you've got 184 employees and one retiree. This is available to retired city staff? Is it being communicated, or?
There's only 5 employees. You need a microphone?
Say it again.
There's only 5 employees. Take the microphone, please. I can't hear you.
There's 5 individuals on our early retirement incentive program, and it's those individuals that it would be available to.
So this isn't open to all retirees?
No, that's correct.
Is that something, I don't recall that, but is that something we discussed previously? What was the logic of that?
For cost, because
Are we not
basically
paying for them?
correct, and they are also not on our healthcare plan. The
Okay,
reason that
okay.
these 5 individuals have access to it is because they pay.
Plan.
Correct.
I'm with you. Okay.
Other questions about the office visits and how that's utilized? Jump back to a few slides then. We'll draw another picture here. The medications that we dispense on site are almost all generic medications. And there's a huge opportunity for savings. I'm sure you've seen at Walmart, Target, some of those folks will sell medications for $4. You've seen that advertised. Well, they're still making money there because a 30-tablet bottle of 250 milligrams of amoxicillin, a very common antibiotic, they may sell it for $4 at Walmart, but your actual cost to the clinic is somewhere around 68 cents. So there's still a significant markup on even those few meds that are made available in the marketplace. It's dramatically more for others. There are some generic medications where the markup is almost 2,000% in the marketplace. Everything that goes through that clinic, the City of Littleton pays at cost. There is zero markup. Care Here does not have any markup on any cost associated with the clinic. So everything comes through at the wholesale rate, wholesale price. So there's significant savings here. When we looked at the specific meds, we had about almost $16,000 of medications that we dispensed last year through the clinic. Those same exact meds, we looked at the Cigna pricing schedule. What is Cigna charging for those when you go through the plan? It would have been about almost $27,000. So there's just short of $12,000 saved just on those meds alone. We want to focus on medications in 2014 and see this grow significantly more. We need to have more penetration with those chronic patients who are on a maintenance med today. Have them come into the clinic and let's discuss the possibility of giving them a 90-day supply and making that at a lower cost for the city, but making it tremendously more convenient for them to utilize the clinic. So we want to mine that particular part of your population and increase this because there's a huge savings opportunity on meds alone. Any questions here? All right. Now, let's move slightly, if we could, from some of the actual hard dollars to specific dollars and look at the universe of possible savings. What you're looking at here is just a selection of just 4 categories. We could have had more, but we selected 4 here: diabetes, high cholesterol, hypertension, and obesity, because there's a significant amount of research and data available in the marketplace to tell you if you can catch somebody who is pre-insulin dependent diabetic and start treating them today, what will your savings be in the coming year? There's good data to support that. For example, in diabetes, the National Institute of Health estimates about $10,000 worth of savings can be realized if you catch that patient early, before they're insulin dependent, begin treating that through other means. So we've had, yes ma'am.
Over what period of time?
This is,
1 year?
yes ma'am. Now specifically what this is saying, if you look in this instance chart, there was 27 individuals who were on your health plan that came into the clinic, and it was discovered for the first time that they were on the borderline of becoming diabetics. They did not know beforehand, they had not been diagnosed before. Now there are other individuals that we're working with and treating in the clinic that are diabetics and have known that, but they're not in this count. Same thing's true for folks that had high cholesterol. 43 of those, 65 with hypertension, and 92 were formally officially diagnosed as having some issues with obesity. This is just that population that has come through the clinic and received that. There are others that we're going to expand that to using other wellness programs that you have. But if you just take those individuals alone and then follow through with the estimate, the universe of possible savings is around $1 million worth of avoided costs from that population, because those individuals, their situations have been unearthed and are being managed now as opposed to later. Let me stop just for a second and make sure I've explained that well. Any questions?
And with that, these are not your typical emergency room type treatments. These are not necessarily absolutely chronic forever, but they're one of these that takes a while to either alleviate or address over time. Maybe you could take one of them and talk a little bit about how early treatment and early recognition ends up saving money over time.
Oh, I'd love to do that. In fact, I'd like to ask Utana if she would. She works closely with your clinic as well as the wellness opportunities. When an individual comes in and presents for the first time, we discover they're diabetic. She can speak to what happens and how we work with those individuals over time and what the outcomes are.
So Phil, to use one example specifically, I'll use diabetes. Diabetes is one that we've identified within aggregate data from other vendors as well as our own as being a concern within the population. So in catching a diabetic early, before it becomes a chronic management situation, the ways in which we do that through the clinic are A, first and foremost through blood work, B, through education and incentive to entice the participant to be compliant with the provider's recommendations. Part of diabetic compliance recommendations are ensuring that they are regularly checking their blood work. So one of the incentives that City of Littleton provides to individuals is coming in to be able to receive diabetic supplies at no cost. So meters to check their blood work, the strips to check the blood work, and to receive refills on those supplies as needed. That serves a twofold purpose. A, it puts the tools in the patient's hands so that they have them, so that there are no excuses not to check in the perfect world. And B, it brings them back in for refills on those medications so that A, we can check on how their progress is. What is their A1C and their blood glucose looking like in 3 months? Have they made dietary improvements? The dietary improvements are addressed through that provider connection with the patient. So we're providing them with the supplies, but we're also asking that via the City of Littleton, to receive these supplies, we want you to be working with a dietitian on education with regards to nutrition. We want you to be working with, a possible exercise coach with regards to ways to improve your physical activity levels. All of which comprehensively, from the medical direct treatment of checking the blood work, of monitoring it regularly, of providing the education, to the more preventative aspect of the education in terms of the small lifestyle changes that can greatly impact your blood glucose levels over time. That's how we want to take long-term treatment and bring those patients into the fold, so to speak. Does that address your question?
Thank you, Utana.
Any other questions here? Yes, sir.
So on the breakout that you had, you said there was 254 individuals at once or more times.
Yes,
So
sir.
do we have a breakout as far as the full-time versus part-time staff?
Well, we can obtain that for you. I don't have it handy at the moment, but we can find out exactly who's been there and what the mix is. We do keep up with the individuals, and we can discern that for you.
And one, for me, for clarification, I'm sort of missing the connection, was it, you said the medication versus prescription?
Oh, sure. If someone goes to Dr. Jones in the community here and has an office visit, he or she might write the prescription for them, and they can then go to Walgreens or CVS or someone, have that filled. And it's processed through your claims just as you would expect. However, if someone comes to the clinic, physician sees them or the nurse practitioner sees them there, they can write scripts as well, and that patient take it out to the marketplace. But if we have that same medication or generic equivalent available in our dispensary, we have about 150 meds in general, we can dispense that right there on the spot. They don't have to go to the pharmacy. They can walk out of the office right there with the med in hand. And it's a savings to the employee and a savings to the health plan. What can't happen is Ben go see Dr. Jones and receive that script, and instead of going to Walgreens, I go over to the carrier clinic and say, hey, here's my prescription for metformin. Can you fill that? Colorado law won't allow that. In most states, that's exactly the case. What has to happen is the physician and the patient have to meet. There has to be a discussion, a medical exam takes place, and if the diagnosis is such, then the physician can dispense. So there's a little bit different process there. Otherwise, the pharmacy board says you're acting as a pharmacy and you're not licensed to do so. Make sense?
So dispensing is not acting as a pharmacy?
There's a very clear distinction in the statutes of the pharmacy board. If we fill a prescription from some other provider, that's acting as a pharmacist.
Okay.
If you're a physician, licensed board physician or nurse practitioner in the state of Colorado, you can see a patient and dispense a med. But that's outside the oversight of the pharmacy board.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Sure. All right. Work with Eric to kind of pull all this together and look at some of the hard dollar savings, some of those things that are less tangible to get your hands around, and try to look at the big picture here. The actual clinic visit savings, if we used all of the numbers from the conservative side, the conservative numbers from Cigna, the conservative numbers from Care Here, just in clinic visits alone, we've saved about $83,000 over what the same visits would cost the plan out in the marketplace. Prescriptions we talked about, the meds that we dispensed versus what those have been filled in the plan are just under $12,000. And then we've identified just under $1 million worth of individuals who are on the verge of becoming large claims for you in the next couple of years. We've captured that in this number here. So you're looking at about $1 million all total. Now, granted, some of those numbers are hard numbers, some are not hard numbers, but we're looking at them in a holistic perspective now. If we look at the estimated cost next year, we're estimating that the clinic operations will be around $276,000 next year. Good portion of that, about $75,000 of that, is us being more aggressive in the med side, as we discussed already. If you take those costs into account and just subtract what we've realized, what we've unearthed so far, you're looking at $779,000 worth of savings here. Any questions about that? Yes, ma'am.
So, you handle also the South Suburban people?
I don't think so. I think it's just folks on your health plan.
Oh, okay. So I thought if you did, then I wanted to make sure we broke those out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
So the 1 million plus savings, estimated savings, that could have been gone to our regular insurer, health insurer.
That's right.
Which would eventually somehow affect the rates.
Right. If you look at the total realm of what the possibilities are, if every one of these individuals that we've identified became fully chronic and were experiencing all the costs associated with their condition, those claims would have flowed through your health plan and would have been something for the city of Littleton to deal with in that fashion. That's correct. Now, here's another view of things that we want to get to. This is not the city of Littleton's data. This is another entity, slightly larger than you are. But what we want to do, we're going to work very close with Cigna this coming year. We'd like to get actual claims data from them to do a much deeper dive than we've done even at this stage so far. What we want to see is, if you look at your costs, and this is an example here of a client before they had an on-site clinic, and what their trend was and what they were experiencing over time. Once the clinic came on site, you take all the claims data and all of the clinic costs together, where do you end up? And we want to see this kind of picture for the city of Littleton going forward. And obviously the difference here is what you would have paid over time. For this particular client, over that 3-year period, that delta between the bar and the trend line, all total for the period is just shy of $10 million. So this is the kind of thing that allows us to have a much deeper dive by going with actual specific claims results from Cigna. And we're working very closely to try to make that happen for this next year. These various pictures then give us a much closer view of what is exactly happening in your clinic and what is the real impact to your health plan. Yes, sir.
I just want to, I mean, I understand what you're doing, but I guess I just want to categorize, is it fair to categorize the line you've got up there as sort of the worst case scenario? And if that's true and you were looking at sort of a proportionality to the whole thing, I mean, you know, it's clear there's savings.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just curious as to where what the range or the distribution of the lines in between the bar and the top line there.
Exactly, yeah.
It's hard to, I mean, I get that you can say that there's $7.2 million of savings net of the care here cost, but that's presuming everything bad happens, and everything bad probably won't happen. So would you care to ballpark?
Really good question, because this model is only as good as those assumptions.
Right.
What we'd ideally like to do is to work with Cigna and say, okay, in 2011, for your similar blocks of business with entities similar to this, what was your trend?
Actuarial.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Was it 9% this given year, then went to 12, and the following year to 7?
Right.
And that's the ideal way. Once we have that data, we can then begin doing those kind of manipulations and see what the numbers are. That's a good question, and that's something we can do. The data is available. It's just a matter of us working together to get access to it.
And I was thinking along the same line, Bruce, was that, as you had mentioned last week, that with our staff, some of them are older, or the costs are going up now because of an older staff. So with our trend versus that trend, that would certainly need to be calculated in there, wouldn't it?
Well, we want to look at all those factors, and we can look at them in different ways. We can try to look as to what the impact is in the marketplace. We can compare that to, sorry. I think I'm on now.
There you go.
Yes, once we have that data, the ability to do various deep dives in various buckets and entertain a variety of questions, and then have our team do the analysis, we can provide a pretty rich suite of reports from various angles once we have that available.
And just to add to that, Jerry, I think you know where it's going, which is the straight line trend isn't necessarily the worst case. Because if you load in your demographic, if your population is actually aging, the straight line will actually understate your cost.
It could, yeah, it absolutely. That's not an unfair point. But I think the data, to Jerry's point as well, I think it's illustrative to get that's sort of the flavor, the color of what we're trying to get at, as opposed to just, there's goodness.
Right.
Well, like right now, as we know, with an older staff, a certain percentage of our staff, that how well does Care Here address that issue specifically? I mean, that's an upcoming issue, obviously, or it's already here, actually.
We've got a slide here that breaks out those startup costs that we mentioned earlier. These are the one-time costs that won't be incurred again, but we wanted to give you a picture of what's actually in your clinic today. Beds, tables, chairs, exam tables, those kinds of things was just over $5,000. We have a ECG machine, an AED device, just over $8,000. You see the computers there, all the other things associated with the clinic to set it up. So there's about $37,000 on the front end to set it up and get it operational. Those costs won't be incurred again this next year. So those have been pulled out and separated for your view here. But those will be useful. Those exam tables will last years and years and years, and the other equipment as well. And then we've got some details we'd like to give you about the wellness program, because it's more than just someone coming in to see a doctor. It's not just an acute care Band-Aid clinic. You've got a much more comprehensive set of services that we're offering here, and I want to give an opportunity for you, Tana, to speak to that in more detail.
So the information that I want to share with you hopefully will tie back into how does our model approach care from a collaborative perspective, meaning tying in the medical with the preventative. So one of the key areas that differentiates care here from some other on-site clinic models is that obviously we provide the on-site medical care services. However, we also have wellness coaches who are available. And these are not just licensed health coaches who go through a certification program for how to speak and coach and monitor patients through behavior change. These are coaches who are specific licensed individuals within their fields, so registered dietitians, exercise physiologists, registered nurses. One of the areas for focused communication in 2014 will be collaborating with HealthBreak to form a comprehensive picture for communicating the services offered through HealthBreak as well as through Care Here in terms of wellness. So the coaches that I mentioned are first and foremost primarily referred to by the providers. So we rely on that provider relationship. The patient goes in, is identified as being at risk for diabetes, and the provider sets the tone for future care with that patient by creating a plan of action or a goal for that patient to meet. So for example, for diabetes, giving them the supplies but getting them on board with meeting with a dietitian. This specific slide breaks out the ways in which the health coaches interact with the patients. So first and foremost, primary mode of communication is going to be email. As we all know, we're probably connected to our email throughout most of the day. So that ends up being the primary contact. However, an area that is also available to individuals at no cost as an extension of the services through Care Here is the ability to work with the coaches both by Skype if they have access to that resource on their computer, as well as in face-to-face visits. So as you can see broken out, there were a total of 216 phone calls made to individuals within the city of Littleton. 48 of those were unique individuals. And that goes down to break out each specific mode of communication, including the face-to-face with 16 unique individuals. The benefit of having this interaction with the coaches is that, as we all know, even with the additional 10 minutes of provider time at the clinic, that still doesn't allow for a lot of opportunity for the provider to provide education. The coaches have unlimited time to be able to sit down and interact with the patient and follow up with them. So going back to the preventative care and identifying the individuals who can potentially pose an increased cost on your plan, such as a diabetic, this provides an opportunity for someone to follow a patient so that they can remind them about a foot exam, so that they can remind them about needed eye exams, so that we can hopefully prevent high expense claims like an amputation, for example, worst case scenario for a diabetic. So any questions about contacts? Mm-hmm.
With some of this, and Jerry, excuse me, with some of this, are you classified under the new Affordable Care Act as an accountable care organization, or how does that integrate with what else is out there?
Mm-hmm. I don't actually know how to answer that, but that's a good question.
Well, like you and many others, we're all trying to figure out exactly how these things will play out in the coming years. So there's still a lot to be done. There are a number of things, actions that we're taking to make sure that should we be deemed eligible, we've done the homework in advance. We're making modifications to our medical record system. We're making modifications to our processes as well. As we get these things more clearly understood, we'll certainly pass it on and let you know if it does qualify.
And these numbers are above and beyond the other 254 individuals. I mean, it may be, but
yes.
But these are different numbers altogether.
These are completely different numbers than the prior slides, correct?
Yeah, because that's a good number.
And we would ideally like to see this go even higher.
Yeah.
And have taken steps towards
Well, that could help reduce the other numbers, though.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so the phone call, email, face-to-face, are some of those the same people?
Some of those would be the same people on the
Like
unique
the
patient.
16 probably may have called and emailed?
Correct. So, and hopefully that would be the case. So if we were working with someone face-to-face, we would also want to be in contact with them via phone and email.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, just one more slide here. This is just a quick snapshot of what we intend to focus on in earnest this coming year. We're going to try to drive even greater utilization We're happy to see things increasing, as we mentioned earlier, in the past few months, and we'll be working to expand that. For example, during the warmer months, the spring and summer, when folks are not as sick, we're going to try to do some promotions to make sure folks come in for annual physicals or things of that nature that are not necessarily tied to the seasons, and we'll be working hard on that. We want to enlarge our med dispensing capabilities. We'll be working closely with the providers to do that. And then finally, expand the wellness participation that Utana just mentioned. Any other questions this evening? Thank you so much for your time. We're thrilled to be partnering with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Utana? Thank you. Thank you.
So this has been 2 years now?
First year.
We had said 2 years, but I thought it was one.
That's why we don't have all that data. Software.
Yeah, that'll be great once we get the data. As I recall, I don't think I was all that crazy about the program at
You were
first.
excited.
No, I wasn't.
You were incredibly.
Get out of here, I was not.
You drove me over there for my first clinic visit.
That's, no.
My first Thursday visit.
That was Bruce. No, oh no, that sounds good.
In the back of us.
We rode bicycles. That's right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
Unicycles.
I need a mic.
That's good.
And Mike, you have a mic, and
Actually, on
and Mike, for council, you have two agenda items.
I do.
The first is
planning it.
for information, and the second is for consideration for possible ordinances. Is that right?
Yeah.
Depending on
The first is what depends on which one you're referring to first. The outdoor display of merchandise could potentially, if council cares to move forward, that would be an ordinance as well.
Okay, so either one.
I have one question before you get started then, if I may. So we have nothing then on this proposed ordinance?
Which?
I mean, existing today?
For the outdoor display of merchandise, I get to that, but I can answer it now. Currently, there's nothing in the books.
All right. Thanks.
So technically, everything out there right now
So
is...
ourselves, we're starting from scratch at least.
Correct. So I'll break into my quick opening here, and then I'm open to ask for questions and whatnot. So what we're proposing here is some language to add to the city code that would regulate outdoor display of merchandise. And just as Councilmember Valdez mentioned, we have nothing in the books right now. Currently, outdoor display is technically not allowed, so they could be cited, but we have not been. And there have been concerns raised by pedestrians, some downtown businesses, and business patrons about the current, what currently occurs down there. And so this was an idea to move forward with, to provide a framework in which businesses are able to display their wares in the public right-of-way if they've got the space available to do so. I did take this to the historic downtown Littleton Board of Directors, and they were okay with the concept of it, moving forward with it, which actually I was kind of surprised by. But it was a very good meeting, and they were supportive of moving forward with this type of regulation. I'll break into kind of the specifics of it now. What we're proposing would be in the CA and the B2 zones. CA is downtown, and B2 there are pockets throughout the entire city, but B2 also includes a few blocks in the downtown area as well, which is why we included it in this, to allow those businesses that may fall in the B2 zone to have outdoor displays. We would require that the store is within a 6-foot setback. So they're within 6 feet of the sidewalk. There are some instances, most stores downtown, of course, are right on the right-of-way, right on the sidewalk, but there are some instances where they're set back and where they may still benefit from display, but... Oh.
Very moving.
I did not know what that was. So that's in there. To move forward with an application, they'd have to have a site plan and also provide insurance, name the city as an insured, both for liability issues.
the city manager or designee, it would likely fall, and code enforcement would be issuing these permits, would be reviewing them and also enforcing them. The display would allow it to be within a certain range of the door or the entrance for the store. Extend a maximum out of 3 feet from the business itself, and still maintaining at least a 6-foot area for the pedestrians to walk.
Well, do you want to take questions now, or you?
That's fine, if you want to jump in, sure.
Well, I don't know, just sitting here thinking about this whole thing. You're basically teeing this up as an exception, like I don't know, an event permit, or?
We actually have a right-of-way permit now, or an
Well, I guess
encroachment on the right-of-way. This is, really, it's based entirely on that.
So I guess where I was going was would it make more sense, would it be more efficient to just basically make it a blanket policy for these particular zones and say anybody can, instead of making people come in and do an application, just say, okay, fine, great, do it. But here's the parameters you can operate within. As long as your landlord allows you, there are some leases where they're not gonna allow you to do it anyway, but if your lease says you can put stuff on the sidewalk, here's what you can do on the sidewalk. And that way, isn't it a lot less aggravation for staff? Isn't it a lot easier for the businesses to basically just treat everybody as a blanket as opposed to try and make everybody come in and ask permission?
And that would be a policy decision. This is what we brought, what I guess code enforcement technically developed, but that would be another option as well.
I mean, did you guys talk about pros and cons on something like that? Or?
Not really, no.
I think part of it is to be able to manage it a little bit more and not have it be the scope creep that we run into on a regular basis when it's just allowed, because what becomes allowed is, I'm your neighbor, oh yeah, you can put stuff out, and there's really no definition around it, and then code enforcement has to go out anyway and do it.
I'm okay with the definition.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm totally fine with basically saying, 3 feet, within 6 feet, whatever the parameters are. I guess I'm just.
I think the permit portion was, a big piece of that is liability concerns when they're putting things out in the right of way. And that's standard for other permits that we have as well. If you're encroaching in the right of way, then you
And this is not abnormal on this, and I don't think we're asking people to, it's certainly not a major time consuming on our side. In fact, it's probably less if we can preempt it by explaining what it is, because if folks come in and talk to us, or us to be out there.
I'm just
Who's
curious.
Mike?
Yeah, and in talking to the merchants, they brought up the issue of this would allow some control of that and ensuring that people that are doing it are following the rules.
Okay.
And we'll minimize our costs and online type things for.
Michael, when you thought about this, did you project a feeling for, say, southbound on Santa Fe, southbound on Broadway from Littleton Boulevard particularly, maybe along the boulevard? I know there are signs there now in a lot of those places which clearly are in that gray area, but what did you think might begin to proliferate?
Well, you mentioned signs. This doesn't cover signs. This is only merchandise for sale.
Okay.
And with the way that we have the setback structured, most places outside of the downtown core likely wouldn't be able to fall within this. And most of those are more the suburban-style shopping centers where they have internal sidewalks, and they'd have to deal with
So you didn't anticipate them putting a table out there, or, any kind of display or anything like that? I'm just worried about safety along the main drags, if there was an interpretation.
And they'd still have to follow with what we've laid out for parameters here, and they'd have to meet those various setback requirements, which in most cases, we don't have a 6-foot sidewalk in those areas.
Okay.
This is in part to respond to Councilmember Stallman's comments. I'm glad this came up, and thank you. By the way, I think the ordinance is very well drafted. I have a couple of things I'd like to tee up for discussion after you finish your presentation, but I think this is timely. to the extent that we're looking at it, or maybe even to a more severe degree, which, not to be mysterious, we can talk about that a little bit later. But there is a bit of I think, a difference of opinion, of subjectivity about what's cute versus what's junky, what's just sort of in the way versus what is helpful economically. And I think that chasm exists between and amongst, I'm talking about, of course, the Main Street vendors in specific. I know that we've got vendors throughout the city, but that may be where they're most tightly packed in. And from what I understand, and we've spoken a little bit about this, Mike was kind enough to give me a little bit of background as to how this evolved. There were just a few, as always happens, isolated instances in which, and Mike, I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about specific, categories of vendors, if not actual vendors.
There are some instances where we have vendors who may display a lot of things on the sidewalk and really inhibit the pedestrian access and use. Other vendors, they do this, and they technically they may already fall within what we're proposing here. And really, what we're talking about is the equivalent of a rack of clothing, the equivalent of about one rack, or about 20 square feet. So it's a table size.
Barry?
So like Aspen Grove, this would not be applicable?
No.
So I guess in my mind, I'm thinking mainly Main Street.
Correct. It's primarily the downtown core.
So then how is this, and I'm not opposed to this, but when I look at some of the tables or even the fenced areas out there now, does it meet these measurement requirements?
This is, again, specifically for items for sale only, for
Right.
merchandise.
But in here, we talked about 3 feet from the building or
You're asking if they're equivalent distances?
essentially.
I don't believe so. Like the patios, they fall under a little different regulation. They're the setbacks and the way that we define the space, because some of those patios are rather large. And so, no, they don't.
Yeah, there's a couple I noticed that were seemed larger than.
Yeah, and within Charlie's department, within Public Works, there is a permit process for those to be reviewed and gone
Thank you.
over. I'm happy to answer questions.
Just if I could follow up, I think the way that this is drafted versus, this is drafted as a maximum of distance out, and the encroachment ordinance, I think, is a maximum or a minimum distance of clearance.
Correct, yeah.
So I believe it's 5 feet minimum clearance on an encroachment, and this is saying a maximum out of 3 feet.
So then with the fenced-in patios, was it 5 feet there from the curb to fence?
Yes, that's my recollection of what the ordinance says. So when we reviewed it, there had to be at least 5 feet of clearance from the curb back to
That's a
where that
permit
was
thing,
at.
they just can't put up a fence.
That is correct. Yep, it's a revocable permit.
Thank you. Becky?
So I have concern that this should not be looking just for pedestrian in the literal sense on feet. We get to deal with very happily wheelchairs, people with crutches, et cetera. So I have some concerns about this because we also have the grates and the trees. And I don't know if I just mentioned blind people. I'm seeing this as a bit of an obstacle course, which I've seen a bit already with activity downtown.
And that's covered, if you'll note number 7, unobstructed portion of the sidewalk measuring not less than 6 feet shall be continuously maintained. The ADA requirements are 36 inches in both ways, so that's 6 feet.
Well, then it needs to say in what way the 6 feet. So you're saying 6 feet from the store?
Unobstructed, the unobstructed portion. So if they're allowed 3 feet from the store out, then there's 6 feet that they have to maintain. So there'd be a 6-foot unobstructed walkway.
It could be less than 3 feet, because it's 6 feet from
Yeah.
the curb.
And depending on the rack size and whatnot, it depends on how it all fits in there.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's clear, that if this is the storefront and that's the street, and then you've got a graded tree, I don't see that this is necessarily saying you've got to be back a certain distance to give an obstruction because of that tree. I mean, I've seen some exciting things happen down there. And the six, well, what's the, in front of the store, what's the cross width?
They vary depending on the streets.
Okay, or the front of the property? I mean, some of
Correct,
the
yeah.
stores
There
are
are
wider
some
than
places
others.
where they won't be able to do this. What they won't be able to meet the clearances. There just isn't the space there
Yeah,
to do
well,
it.
I would like to see if we're wanting to have this unobstructed,
So Peggy,
something
what you're
that-
suggesting is we have that maximum in section 5, the maximum of 3 feet, but require that there is at least a minimum of 5 feet of open clearance, kind of to Jerry's question. Now, the 6 is from the building front, but, so if you can go out 3 feet, you're saying there needs to be at least 5 feet of clearance?
Yeah.
And write that in the affirmative, in the
with-
ordinance?
With, however you would phrase it in terms of
Yeah, I think I get,
eliminating that,
yeah.
that tree grate space. I'm not
Well,
saying that right, but,
I think I understand what we can put in the ordinance.
Address it somehow, yeah. We'll have to.
Anything else on this one?
No.
Good. Yeah, okay.
Additional questions?
I was just going to ask, so if I understand what you're saying is, if you don't have an 8-foot sidewalk, you can't do anything.
You can't go up to 3 feet. You might be able to.
You could do 2
You
feet.
have to maintain, yeah. So-
Because then you'd be, so if you had a 7-foot sidewalk, you could do a max of 2 feet because you got to maintain at least 5.
Yeah, that's what I heard was.
Correct, yeah.
I understand.
And I may not have followed exactly what Councilmember Cole was. Okay.
Yeah, I have two, and you may not know the answer to one or both of these, sort of housekeeping questions on behalf of the prospective vendors that would be applying for these permits. I didn't see what and I probably just missed it, but I didn't see what the fee was.
We haven't set a fee for it.
Okay, any idea?
And there, for the right-of-way permits now, I don't believe there is a fee. So it's likely that we wouldn't.
Okay.
The main requirement is that they provide us a site plan and they provide insurance and name the city as an insured.
So this isn't really a profit
It's not a
generator for
revenue
the city?
generator
Okay.
by any means.
Second question is, and I know off the top of your head, I don't expect you to know, any wild guess about what the cost to provide the liability insurance
I do
writer
not
would be?
know.
Because they're going to want to know what that is.
Sure.
So, but I have something I'd really like to kind of tee up as a result of a lot of conversations that I've had with Main Street vendors, frankly, over the months, but particularly in the last couple of days since this kind of hit our collective desks. And that I'm seeing a lot of interest in having this be even further limited, not to day in and day out, but to particular events like weekends in August, when there would be ordinarily, warm weather. Let's say not during the Candlelight Walk for obvious reasons, but some types of events downtown that would be drawing a large number of participants to street fairs, Western Welcome Week perhaps. So I think I would be.
So you're saying prohibit it during those times?
No. I would say that rather than having it be a permit that has a 365-day applicability, I said that you could get a permit. I guess I would advance the discussion, I'm not being dictatorial, to say maybe we could come up with, staff could come up with a list of 7 events or 12 events or something like that where.
It's not allowed.
Where it is allowed,
Regardless of permit.
No, in other words,
No, I think,
even
if I understand right, you're saying limit it to, so a lot of communities say you can put sidewalk sales out 10 times a year. And you get to pick the 10 times as a particular vendor. You may pick a different 10, but limit it. And then, just as an example, and then I think, Randy, if I understood what you said, you're saying, when are those times, there might be 5, 7, 9, 12, 15 of them, that we feel collectively, working with the downtown, that it would be appropriate to have outdoor merchandise, and those would be the only times that you could have outdoor merchandise under these conditions.
Exactly, and in addition to which, I think it would help the vendors because it would be synergy that would be created where everybody would.
Their annual sidewalk sales, those kind
Yeah,
of things.
it's a common thing.
That's my point. So rather than 365 days, I'm saying whatever the deal is, if it's once a month, if twice a month when it's nice weather, whatever it is, I'm sure that there's some statistical analysis of best bang for
Probably
the
the
buck.
majority, how the majority of communities do it is limit it to small, so you're not walking, I can't remember who said the word clutter, but I think that's probably how the majority of them do it.
So I like exactly how it's drafted. My own suggestion would be to just look at, if you will, further limitation to a certain set of times. You guys would know those much better than I do.
Sure. And that might be something you could work out too with the merchants themselves.
Well, that would,
Merchants,
the limiting the times would also reduce, I think, their liability insurance, right?
Yeah, I don't believe the insurance costs much, but
But-
it would certainly limit it,
Yeah.
yes.
And then though, in the permit form, then you would need to change number 4, and if we're limiting it to special days, it wouldn't be, or else it would have to say no more than 1 year on the days specified or whatever, right?
Correct, yeah, we'd have to address that both in the language and the permit itself.
Thank you.
Michael, you mentioned they would submit a site plan, and I'm thinking that the issue that has been discussed about the grates limit some of the space. There's also some street signs that might be impacted. There's bicycle racks now. There are a number of other things. So a good site plan, giving an appropriate safety range around those obstacles would be, I think, the answer to some of this issue.
Correct, yeah, and that's why it's in there, that's why we're looking for it.
Group, just to make sure we have our sentiment, we're looking for proposed ordinance on outdoor display of merchandise. It seemed like there was some sentiment towards limiting the time, possibly excluding or maybe suggesting other times, and then maybe some additional specificity with regard the site plan for safety purposes, recognizing trees, grates, and other installations that may be on the right-of-way. Any objections?
Nope, perfect. Thank you.
You.
Oh, can I ask one other thing before we get off that? Just read on, well, it's a clarification.
He asked, can he? He didn't ask, could he?
Oh, okay.
There is
Mother
no
may
brace.
I.
No brace for you, man.
Yeah, no. Mike, I was just gonna ask I assume, but you tell me, the actual permit itself is gonna be an online adventure? I mean, we aren't requiring paper, right?
That's what we'd hope. There are some businesses that they're gonna wanna use paper though, so we'll give them the option, depending on what we can get up and going in community development.
All right, thanks. See, that wasn't.
Almost had one.
Almost.
God, we're setting the bar pretty high.
Next one?
You're
Item
wrapping
D,
the
Mike.
year up.
Okay, number 2, we are on to the Police Technology Fund. You may recall back in the when discussing the 2013 budget, I wasn't here, but you approved moving forward in the police department an e-citation system. That system is in the process of being purchased and being rolled out, and in approving it, you suggested to staff that we bring you an option to have the offenders pay for the system, which is what this surcharge is proposing to do. What it would be is a surcharge that would be levied on any criminal action, parking ticket, or traffic offense that would, when they're using these electronic ticket machines, basically, and that surcharge then would be used to cover the technology. It's the cost of implementing the technology itself over a 6-year time frame. staff has estimated, we don't have final numbers yet, so this is maybe slightly premature, but the staff is estimating over a 6-year time frame, it's approximately a $500,000 investment to move forward with this. The initial rollout, you approved 175 in the budget, and the cost looks like it will be about 180,000. So we're about on line with that. And so that's really very simple language. It was based on the Victim Assistance and Law Enforcement Program, which also there's a surcharge provided for on tickets now. That's what I have. What we estimate right now for a fee to cover the costs, at least for the 6 years, and then once that 6-year time frame is up, we can reevaluate it, sunset it, or drop it. But to cover 100% of the enrollment costs, we're looking at around a $7 per ticket surcharge.
The 5K was a 6-year period?
The $500,000 over it is a 6-year cost.
6 years.
And so, looking at, in that time frame, we average about 73,000 tickets. You're looking at about a $7 per ticket surcharge. And that would cover the cost of implementing the program. And a lot of the cost of implementing the program is the purchasing the technology itself. We have MDTs, the laptops, in all the cars now. This will, in addition, we're purchasing tablets for the motor officers, and everyone needs printers, and those printers are not cheap. For it to outfit all of them, it's almost as much, if not a little bit more, than the software itself, the individual handheld printers that are used, the portable printers.
Just in taking a look at it, Mike, rather than a flat amount that would be like taking a $25 fine to 32, adding the surcharge, what would happen if it were a percentage? How would that change it so that it might actually be scaled more to the offense?
And that's what we initially had hoped to propose, but in talking to both the judge, the court, and everyone, and the officers themselves, they thought the administration of a sliding scale would be really difficult. And so the flat fee makes it a lot easier to impose on it.
Other questions? Bruce? Bruce. And then Bruce, too.
Other examples of this that you guys were able to use as benchmarks?
There are, especially in northern Colorado, there are a number of communities that do this. Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley. Greeley has gotten rid of theirs. They call them traffic calming surcharges or something to that effect. But in Greeley, and in those communities, they were upwards of $30 a surcharge. They were very expensive. And they were used, granted, not for the technology, to implement the technology themselves. They were used for special enforcement programs. They were using them for improvements in public works, like traffic calming, speed bump kind of things, or those kind of improvements.
Okay, and so the application though is, make sure if I understand this correctly, so a police officer writes someone a speeding ticket, and instead of writing the multi-copy hard, paper version, they write it on an iPad or whatever.
They'll take your driver's license, swipe it, it will pre-populate all the fields, ticket rolls out, and you're off and going in a couple minutes.
Okay, so instead of it being a $75 ticket for speeding, for the sake of an argument, it's now an $82 ticket, but the driver still has the right to pay it.
Correct.
I assume they could pay it on the spot if they wanted to. Since
Only in cash.
It'd be very quiet.
Huh?
No. You can't pay it on the spot.
Remember, he's a CPA, Michael. He doesn't.
You can mail it in or else appear in court.
Okay, but
you have those options still, though.
Huh?
You still have those options.
He was doing a bit.
You still have those options, just as you would today.
You can contest it, obviously.
Correct.
You've got your legal rights to contest it, or you can mail it in.
Correct.
But there's no way to just. Okay.
Bruce?
Okay.
Michael, you'd mentioned this was similar to the Victim Assistance Fund within the city. So are there any other fees that we attach through the courts?
As far as I can find, that the victim assistance was the only other one.
I like the idea that, of this. I want to go back to the issue, and I know you discussed it as a staff issue, but was there discussion of, let's say the break is a $100 fine. Anything below $100 was the $7, above the $100 might be 10, or 15, or some other incremental amount that didn't create an auditing nightmare. But it just seems to me that the judge has some opportunities to give some fines that certainly merit more than $7 to the fee. How did you discuss that?
In talking with the judge and the clerk's office, they preferred because I had first initially proposed a sliding fee, a percentage, basically, and they came back and said we really prefer it to be a flat fee. It's just easier to administer.
Well, and if you think about, I mean, just to be, the other part of it is a fee is a recovery of service.
Yeah, and that's the.
And that's really the issue is here is this is not the punitive component. This is an administrative overhead cost for the system that provides our ability to give you that ticket for
That's a flat
speeding.
marginal type cost.
Correct. Yeah, you can't charge more. You can't use it to be punitive. The judge can still, within whatever discretion is in the code, up or down, up and down the fine. But
That's
this
the
is
fine itself you can do that with. Yeah.
So my other question is just in the discussion. He also deals with not just the criminal code and the traffic code, but he has some other city ordinances that could be the building department, could be the library. Any thoughts about where those in the future might fit into this, or, I'm looking at the creeping issue of this and whether that's a good idea or not.
And it depends on how the ticket's administered. Not all tickets will be written through this, but if and when they move into a time when that's the case, that I don't know.
If I can, just from a public policy standpoint, I think if you look at one of the reasons, and I don't recall, I think it was Councilmember Cole that originally had asked us to do this, is we are implementing, there is an infrastructure here that, absent that fee, is borne by the general fund. And so what we're saying are the people who are utilizing this particular service, in the building department world, you have to pay your building permit because you and I don't pay that. You're building your deck. It's same type of public policy decision, is you're saying that those that utilize the system pay the fee, and it's a fee, so it's got to be commensurate with the service provided. So dividing those numbers is where the staff came up with the $7. You now have that group paying for that service, and the rest of us are not paying for that infrastructure piece because we're not utilizing that service. If we utilize the service, we get to pay the fee. And I think that is a very standard public policy decision that has been used for decades in here, and there's nothing different about this.
Yeah.
And so we might look at some future areas where we do that.
Certainly, yeah, and we do now when we make a change in the building department world, and we buy a new software package and we revamp out our fee schedule. Part of what we're doing is saying our new infrastructure cost is X, and that amendment that we bring to you for that building permit is reflective of what that is. It's not as a direct component because this is just one. You've got as Mike was describing, you've got a printer and a software package that's got staff and everything built into it, but same philosophy.
Okay, thanks.
So, several things, but first, so with the building permit piece, does that go into a special fund?
No.
So, even though I did request that we do this, year and a half ago, whatever, I'm looking at a larger policy issue. If we collect it, even if it doesn't go into a special fund, it's essentially paying for itself, even though it doesn't go into a special fund. I mean, if it didn't go into a special fund.
This is not an enterprise fund in the sense that you are collecting the total cost of the service providing because you've got a punitive component. What we understood the request was is
Cover the cost of the
software system and the hardware associated
Yeah.
with it, is there a way to recover those costs?
Right.
That's
but-
what we've
But
got.
why does it have to go into a special fund to do that?
It does not.
would seem to me, so I'm going to oppose that piece, because it seems to me that by the same token, the library fines ought to go to the library in a special fund, and other things would go to special funds, and by that kind of logic. But it seems to me it ought to just go into the general fund with this understanding that it's paying for itself. That's,
Certainly can do that.
That's a policy
Okay.
decision
Yep.
that council
yeah,
makes.
well, that's the point I'm putting out for council, so.
It probably wouldn't qualify under a traditional definition, but with respect to the, we've got the police component of an impact fee floating around, right?
Correct.
This isn't a growth-oriented issue that we could argue would be eligible for utilization of impact funds, fees?
No, because you don't need to do this. This is an efficiency standard on our side. We can keep writing paper tickets.
Okay.
Not to mention you already approved it.
Yeah.
Approved.
You approved it before the impact fee went in. Approved it last year. But this is not a capacity issue. This
No,
is just a straightforward efficiency issue.
More of a curiosity, because I know there's some latitude in terms of how we can apply stuff, and I didn't know if anybody talked about it, had thought about that. So if you have, so it isn't, that's fine.
I'm still kicking around this idea that I was having, and this amplifies to Peggy's point too. It just seems to me, right now, if we give somebody a series of copies of something and we have to charge them for the copies, we basically have a system that allows us to account for that as an input, but it goes into the general fund. It could happen up in finance, it could happen down in the police department, it could happen in fire department in their inspections area. Those copies are paid for by the citizens for the service that's provided, goes into the general fund. It is accounted for by a special line item, I think, in most cases. And that works. What I'm concerned about and what I was working around is, it's a very clean thing to be able to say that there's no bounty hunting in writing tickets. You know, that no portion of that ticket goes directly back to that police department. It goes to the general fund. It goes through, budget interpretations and the council's decisions about it. I kind of like that better than putting it on there. The distinction for the Vail grant was, it really was a stipulation of the grant. It had to be the way that it had to be because of the way the grant was. So I am thinking I would rather just see this as a system that we implement, but that the revenue go back through the general fund like I'm describing.
Any other comments? Okay, so just to test the sentiment of council, with regard the surcharge for technology, looking for some ordinance to come back to council for consideration, and whether staff wants to deal with the special fund or not. It sounds like there's some sentiment to have it go into the general fund and have it treated that way.
It's desirable. I'm happy to bring that.
Other comments?
Have the $7, whatever per ticket go into the general, not a specific. I would rather see it go to a specific to pay for this program.
So you may want to do a pro and con on administering that. Okay. Other comments?
Well, I think if this is coming to us and we're doing pro and con, I think what Bruce said about the possibility of this sort of being a bounty kind of thing ought to be included in the council communication.
I'd prefer, if I may, that you guys decide tonight, because this is strictly a policy decision. This is a very different, I mean, the The pro of putting it into a fund is you have accountability for that money, and there's an equal between the cost of the thing is X, you're collecting Y until X is paid for. And then you amend that fee so it's commensurate with whatever the new cost is. As Mike said, you've got to do the printers and that kind of thing. So there is accountability by having it in that specific fund. The con is what Councilman Beckman already pointed out, which is you could, in theory, have an argument that these guys are collecting it or they're writing more tickets because that increases that fund. The reality is if they wrote more tickets and collects that fund, it means it pays it off quicker, and we would amend that fee sooner than 6 years, in theory. The reality is it's still coming ultimately out of the general fund because that's what these dollars are, and that's where these will be. It's not a fund in the legal sense of the enterprise fund where the council doesn't control those. The purpose is more for internal. I'm not sure if, and I can clarify and correct if I'm making a misstatement here, which is I think the way finance would state this is it's a little f fund, not a enterprise fund where the council can't move those monies back and forth. So it's probably, and I'll be happy to follow up with you guys when we bring in the ordinance for it, but I think it's more of a tracking purpose internally to finance and not, again, a restricted fund that council can't take those monies out of, but I'll confirm.
Given the internal accountability, I think what you might want to do is consider softening items E, which talks about specific aspects of disbursement and approval, so that it is indeed a small f, and maybe that will address some of the concern around that.
And we can have it clarify that it's a part of the council budgeting process.
Does that sound better?
I think that would be closer to what I was looking for.
And just for honesty's sake, I suspect if it's going to take 6 years, is that what we said, to pay this off estimated? There will be a new version of this coming out. And so, no, but you said something to the effect of could reduce it or whatever. I just see it, going on, so.
Yeah. Yes, maintenance costs tend to be less expensive in updates than the original purchase, was my point.
Yeah, and there's ongoing fees for the, for the various software interactions.
Yeah.
So that's, as well as you have to, every 3 years or so, you have to purchase new tablets. Printers will go out, you'll have to replace those. So there's ongoing fees to keep this going.
You okay with this, Mike?
Yeah.
Got it?
Got it. Thank you very much.
And then before we disperse this evening, a reminder for those folks attending the Economic Forecast Breakfast on Friday, option of parking across the street is available. So that's at the Hyatt. And remember, 7 p.m. Monday evening is our gathering. Okay. And we're dispersed.
Okay, cool. Drop, Phil.
That's the way the
What is Friday again?
Taking a credit card on the spot.
You can't do that?
I didn't sign up for that. I guess maybe if it's not too late, I think I will. We'll take Friday off.
Okay, it seems awful,
I think Becky
since
has-
we're already elected. No, I
don't think you want them.
But when we had to run a credit card, I agree, but if you're just swiping everything anyway because of the equipment, why wouldn't you just swipe a card?
It's a whole different.
Okay, yeah, let me do it. Check for that.
This is a high pressure, high tension. Have the list.
And where is it located again?
It's at the high.
Which one?
One in Texas.
Okay, yeah, cool.
But
Yeah,
I understand what
I
you're
didn't want to
saying.
take Friday off anyway, so.
Okay, somebody calls me home and said, yeah, I was doing 15 to 35, I was jumping through it. Here's my credit card, it's done, I go home.
Okay, cool. That'd be good to go through.
If that's literally, if that's the issue,
And I understand your point, that, you know, they're not out there.
But you're
Okay.
you're drawing on a different database, and you're swiping a credit card.
But it's all electronic. I mean, if you're swiping a driver's license, you hit the button and then you swipe the card, boom, you're done. And it's gotta say court costs, it's gotta say, you know, follow on skips. I get your point on that, absolutely, on cops not wanting to screw around with, you know.
Putting a different level. Give me your credit card.
Yeah.
Well, isn't the question of whether you have it on, connected or not?
And they all are.
They all are?
They
Okay,
all
well,
are. They have to be, because they have to run upon the database when you swipe your driver's license.
Well, that, yeah, exactly.
Well, doesn't that also, when you swipe with the database, you have the opportunity for other checks? Actually.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean,
That's
so
exactly
there's,
the case. And there's a positive in that.
yeah, which we didn't even talk about.
I mean, it seems, I get that there's issues.
There are some states where they do that, but I don't, Colorado isn't one of them.
Okay, well,
I just remember back, it was,
And I'm guessing
you know, in
it was-
for a penny, in for a pound, if we're doing all this stuff.
the year was 1980.